Okay. Are we ready? I think we are. Hi, friends. It's been a very long time since I sat down and talked to a camera. I feel like so much has happened since my last video, like 4 years ago. Because of big changes I've made recently, I've been in a reflective mood that I just feel like I need to sit down and yap. So thank you for clicking on this video and spending however long with me as I talk through the last few years in my tech career. My goal for this video is to talk about what's happened in the last few years, but also for those who are looking for a career path similar to mine, to see what's out there and what the industry is like now. If you are new here, my name is Clark Narvas, although I did get married this year. So now my name is Pauline Bakhtiari. Yes, that is my ring. I gave myself a time limit of around a minute to make sure that I don't yap about my ring, but I really just need to show you. He cooked. Incredible, right? That's one of my many changes. The last time I sat down and filmed a video, I think I just turned 25, so I was still a baby. And next month, I'm about to hit 30. I currently live in the UK, although in the last 2 years, I was semi-nomadic. I was traveling a lot. I lived from my backpack that then became a suitcase because I collected all this stuff from all of my adventures. But the place I lived in the most was the beautiful, wonderful country of Greece. I'm so grateful for that chapter because it really did shape who I am now. One of my favorite things about being someone who has shared and documented a lot online has to be the fact that over the last few years, I revisit some of my old work and I'm like, wow, I've changed so much. The way I speak, the way I write, the way I present myself, even my mindset has shifted on a lot of different topics, which we will get to at some point. One of the biggest inspirations for this video was actually rewatching my 40-minute video about how I got into tech with no computer science degree and how I pushed myself into this direction in DevRel and community. Worked obviously very hard to get to where I am now. I want to just get straight into it. So in my last video, I talked about how I had just joined this super cool startup called Gitpod. And Gitpod was like, honestly, now in hindsight, it really set me up for success. I think I was just 3 months in. It was my first job in the DevRel/community space. I was so thankful that the team gave me a chance to do this professionally. Building communities full time, being a developer, educator, I just loved nerding out with people who also cared deeply about what I cared about. I still couldn't really believe it. I think it didn't really hit me until probably the year mark where I was like, oh, wait, this is actually real. I am getting paid to do what I always did as a side hobby. I started as a senior community engineer. I came in with the goal of trying to unify our communications to our community, but also build systems that allow us to talk to them better, to find ways to get their contributions and highlight them. 99% of my time, I was sat there talking to our community, like, tell me your problem. Have you tried this in the product? What can we do to improve the product? And how can we create better feedback loops so that we are closer to our engineers? And my second thing I shipped was our Gitpod screencasts, which now in hindsight, why did we call it screencasts? Because it sounds so like 90s. I don't know why. But anyway, that was actually one of my favorite projects to do. I love teaching other people and helping them out and really making them understand, oh, this is how to do X. I lived and breathed Gitpod. I just enjoyed the process of creating and having, at the end of writing my script of what Gitpod is or doing this product feature, I really enjoyed then going through the process of, okay, how can we tell a better story here? I forgot my name. And then the third thing I shipped that I really loved was our actual Gitpod community. We had a discourse, which is your traditional forum, and we made the decision to completely remove it. Then we actually ended up moving our whole community over to Discord. Everyone enjoyed that real-time chat, that feeling of a presence being there. We just wanted to feel like we were there with other people in the room. One of my roles there was to build a community around that, to do that layer of engagement in that space. We did office hours pretty much every week with our engineers, with our community members. We built workflows on top of it to make it more efficient. When a question came in, we wanted to organize it better so that it would be threaded, because as you all know, real-time chats can be completely chaotic, and sometimes it reaches this point where it's like, okay, I get no value from this. It's just noise. What am I doing in this space? But then we had the problem where we had none of this on our Google search. We built out ways to get frequently asked questions from the community that really should be in our documentation or in our blog posts. It was lots of trial and error, and now I'm saying it out loud. It's really interesting how it evolved. It was at this role I became a manager for the very first time. I ended up building a team of 3. I want us to empower each other, to help each other out. I don't want it where people who work in my team are like, oh my gosh, I'm so anxious. I don't feel like this is a safe space. That is not what I want. I wanted really to make sure that everyone is shining in my team. I learned so much about how to do that in this kind of environment. At some point, I became head of community, which was my first ever big promotion. I think the most validating thing from that promotion was people in the community that I was interacting with day in and day out was saying, oh, that's such an unsurprising promotion. I thought you were already head of community. At that point in my career where titles really meant the world to me, I felt like I was still trying to get my foot in the door. I was still trying to establish myself. I wanted people to take me seriously. And I felt like my title did help a lot with that. We had this incredibly vibrant online community where people were interacting with each other. Because of the workflows that we had set up in our community, it actually got to a point where it was too automated. You know what? That was one of my biggest mistakes in this community at GitPod, where I felt like we really automated it to perfection, but it became more of a help desk where people would be like, okay, let me write a question. And then it was automatically answered by a bot that knew all the things. As the world started opening up a little bit in 2023, one of the things I wanted to build out more were meetups, meeting our community in person and hanging out with them and bringing that community to life. I ran with this idea. I was like, you know what? How do we scale this? How do we make sure that it's not just us hosting, it's also our community members? By the time I left, we hosted 35 plus meetups in under a year. One of them was in France. We gave them the toolkit. This is a Notion doc explaining everything that you need to do to successfully host this meetup. And they ran with it. And then we saw the comms the next day where 40 people turned up in this small town talking about GitPod. It was so cool to see our community come to life. As you zoom out a little bit, what is the value of these meetups? What was the value of bringing our communities together? It was a way to build on those relationships, because those relationships are the things that then, as a result, help drive your business. The return on investment of relationships, I cannot stress enough. One of the things I delivered end to end, which really tested me, was probably our big conference, CDE Universe. It was my first time in San Francisco. When I turned up at CDE Universe, I was like, okay, cool. People are arriving. Our speakers are here. Everything looks good. It's all going great. That is literally until we were about to get started. And I was like, oh no, we need someone to MC. And because I had been doing everything else, I completely forgot about that detail. I jumped in, got the microphone, and I was like, hey, welcome to CDE Universe. Very excited to see you all here. It was one of the most stressed I've ever been. It put me in a good position in the future. I was like, okay, I know now for sure that I can host and organize a conference end to end, but that doesn't mean I should. I should also ask for help. I should also go out and make sure that if we're going to plan a project like this in under a month, we need to be realistic about it. And I think overall, that kind of demonstrates what my experience at Gitpod was like. I got to be the best IC ever. I could also be so intense with my work. I could do as much as possible and continue that intensity. And that's what I did throughout my tenure. I really threw myself into it, completely was like, this could fail. I was at a stable job where I was doing something I'd known. Going from that to jumping to Gitpod was one of the risks that I took, and I was like, this paid off so much, but at the time I was terrified. It became a huge part of my life. I have never been that person that has been like, oh, I'll clock into work and clock out. I do not know how to do that because I just put my whole soul into things I'm passionate about. And so for me, it was just one of those things where I really threw myself into it, took the risk, and it paid off. When I moved on to my next chapter, I realized that actually that intensity and the amount of work that I did, it was all great and it benefited the company a lot, but I also need to know where my limits are. It doesn't necessarily mean just because you ship a lot of stuff, it's good quality. It doesn't mean you're doing the best work of your life. You are just doing as much as you can. In the chaos of startups, sometimes that is the job. You just have to do whatever needs doing. When I was then looking for my next thing, I specifically wanted to go for something that I was very intentional about. Everything I shipped had to have a purpose. Around 6 months before I was let go from Gitpod, I was having some conversations with companies that had come up, opportunities come up for me all the time. And most of the time I'm not looking, but in this case I was like, you know what, I'm going to have a conversation with this company. By the time I got an offer I was really excited about, I decided that actually I'm scared. I'm really scared of leaving everything I know, and Gitpod opened up the doors for me and I can't leave. I don't know how. I'm scared. I politely declined the offer. It gave me a real sense of my experience at Gitpod and what I want moving forward, and I thought I could make that change in the organization. I guess nothing ever really prepares you for a layoff, and I read so much on the internet, especially now. We're going through another era of layoffs, but I think at that time, because I was so dedicated and I really put my soul into the company, I couldn't even imagine what it would like to not be part of the journey. I remember it so vividly. I just finished my spin class. I then went for my walk, got my coffee, my usual routine. My manager sent me a message saying, hey, let's talk. And I was like, sure, I'm actually coming back home from a walk. I'll be back home in a bit. And I remember the walk home, I was like, something feels off. There was definitely some changes happening. You know that there's conversations happening behind the scenes. My manager was like, hey, we want to transition you out of Gitpod. That was it. And I was like, oh, okay. There was a voice in my head that was like, don't get emotional. Do not get emotional about this, even though I am a very emotional person. And as I said, I don't know if I'm conveying it well, but I really love that company and I really believed in it and I loved the team. I filmed a little video for Gitpodders and I was like, thank you so much. So by the time you watch this, the news has come out of my departure at Gitpod. And I just wanted to record this very quick screencast to reflect and share my gratitude for the last almost 3 years here as part of this layoff. I thought initially it was just me, but then it ended up being a total of 6 or 7 of us. We created this support group. If you remember, I got an offer from this other company and I said no to it. It was literally a week later I was let go. And so I was thinking maybe I should go back to them, and we had a conversation, but unfortunately they let the offer go. It's always like when you least expect it. Timing is everything. And I truly believe that more than ever. Vercel reached out. Actually, they reached out to me in 2021 for a role of a community manager. I politely said, no, there's stuff I want to build here at Gitpod, the challenge I still need to complete before I move on. But then Scott was looking at my LinkedIn profile. I sent him a message hey, Scott, how are things going? He was like, oh, you know what? It's really interesting that you popped up because we are hiring somebody right now. Do do you have a couple of minutes? I found myself in the interview process for this community role. I also did one interview round with Guillermo, CEO of Vercel, which I really enjoyed because a couple of years ago, I really wanted to do a podcast with him. Then that fell through. And fun fact, ended up doing a community session with him later. I got my offer. The following week, I wrote a blog post about my departure at Gitpod, and my post that I shared on socials made its rounds. I think it was probably one of my most popular tweets about my job ever. It definitely showed me that my community has my back. And I think I didn't quite realize that because I associated my identity with Gitpod. And so I was like, now they're out of the picture, I won't do well anywhere else. I only know what it's like to be a Gitpodder. I don't know what to do. There was so many posts of people being like, got you, let me reach out to somebody, check your DMs. It was the busiest my DMs had ever been. I ended up dedicating the next few weeks to finding my ex-colleagues a new place to work. I made a ton of intros, jumped on calls with people saying, hey, cool product, but I don't think I'm going to go ahead with you guys, but let me intro you to someone I know. I'm so happy that we ended up finding better places where we got better pay, got a better role, ended up having better opportunities as a result. When I was still up in the air talking to Vercel, there was a LinkedIn post of someone from Notion saying, I'm looking for a community lead to help build out some of our community programs. Who's the best person you know? Someone tagged me on that post. Then I woke up the next morning and there was like 10 other people replying to that comment. They were, yeah, plus one to Pauline. Pauline should do this, blah, blah, blah. I'm a little bit emotional right now and I have chills thinking about how everyone showed up for me. When I reflect on my career so far and everything I've built, I'm like, this is my why. Being able to help people, it just goes back round to you. This is the community. Despite getting an offer from Vercel and then helping my colleagues land their next job, I was still having really bad anxiety. How do I know this won't happen again? What can I do to prevent it next time? Because I felt I had a relatively safe job. Being very public, that became like my obsession for a while. During my break, I was like, okay, let's plan this out. What would this look like at Vercel? What are the things I want to focus on? Coming in to help community efforts at such an epic company with the most incredible brand was honestly a dream come true. I'm also super grateful joining at the time I did. My manager, Matthew Sweeney, really gave me the opportunity to shine. He knew all of the people and all of the adventures that the company had gone on up until that point. I felt I had the best mentor internally to really land well. The mission was very simple. It was create a generation of Vercel experts, and the real problem to solve with the community was to make sure that the community knows what we're shipping and fully understands it. The biggest problem was that Vercel ships so fast. Can you imagine having that as a problem? That's incredible. All of our communities were distributed across every single platform. We had one community manager, Amy, who led these efforts. When I landed, one of the things that I was first put on was the project to move over from GitHub discussions to our own community platform, which today is hosted on Discourse. It felt really good to be able to say that I helped ship this community platform within quite literally the month that I had joined. Another part of my role was to make sure that we were meeting community where they're at. It truly is impactful being there, educating on a feature they may have missed or a certain way of setting something up. Even today, I've been getting DMs from people who have heard my news of my departure at Vercel, where they've been like, I remember seeing you on Reddit. I remember seeing you on Twitter, and you personally helped me out with a problem I'd been stuck on for weeks. That interaction in itself is one of the many ways you can create these super fans, these advocates, and it really helps with general vibes and brand. That is something that I feel strongly that when it was, even in the early days when it was just me and Amy, we really helped steer the direction for the community to see Vercel in a more positive light and a more human light instead of these really harsh corners of a triangle. I actually used to say in my first few weeks, my job here is to soften the triangle a little bit. I didn't say that to our brand designers because I didn't want anyone to actually think I was going to soften the sharp edges of our logo. I wanted to bring this human layer to our community. When things happen, when things break, I think people often forget that there's another human on the other side of the screen. By building our community and reminding people that, hey, you're speaking to the human on the other side of the screen, I think it really helps people remember that, oh, actually, I shouldn't rant at this person. It's not their fault that this has broken. And we know that things happen sometimes. And it really creates this level of empathy that I feel in the community we managed to cultivate. My 2 years there was really fun. I got to build out this platform where we mostly did async communication, but we really wanted to add this layer of interactivity, community engagement, and personality. I pitched this idea of creating live sessions every week. It worked really well at GitPod, and I thought it would be great to do it here. I was honestly surprised that we weren't doing it already. We put in a lot of care to launch these community live sessions. Community members loved getting involved in it, highlighting their projects, what they're building. But I think for me, the real magic moment was the internal community that we got to build, where we have people in the engineering department who got involved in these live sessions where they don't really usually do these kinds of things. A good example is when we did our Fluid Compute launch, we also did an AMA with the engineering team. I absolutely loved being a part of that because I could see behind the scenes that everyone was slightly nervous to do this demo. Once we got the questions in, people were engaging. The engineers understood that this is really important. I got to know our customers more. I got to understand what they need. I got to also show off this cool thing I built. Cool, go me. I'm really proud of that culture because then that kind of translated internally where it started becoming part of the playbook of product launches. So whenever we did launch something, it was like, okay, should we do a live session about this in the community? It's not just Vercel, but there's a lot of companies that just like ship things and they're like, all right, on to the next feature. Let's do the next thing. Sometimes we forget this human aspect. We're building for people. We need to hear what they have to say. We need to hear their feedback and bring that in and talk to them and get people to actually use this feature. Then other aspects that I really enjoyed in the community was working with CAP. CAP organized a meetup in New York. It was one of the first Vercel community meetups I had been to, and the vibes were incredible, obviously hosted by one of the best community leaders in the space, but also it was just really cool to like nerd out with other people like me who also loves the product and how effortless the developer experience is. These people are the ones that we are building for. They are the ones that transform to lifelong fans who really carry the brand and advocate for us. An extension of that was also the conferences. So we have the Next.js Conf and also SHIP, which I used to watch on YouTube. I used to obsess over them and love how Apple-esque they felt. Seeing the behind the scenes chaos that was beautifully executed. It was just things like this that I honestly, there were times where I had to pinch myself. I can't believe I am part of the company I used to talk about a lot. I have used for inspiration for my own work. Other things I got involved with was more of the content side of things. I wrote blog posts about how we're using agents to automate not the soul of the community away, but the things that we didn't want to focus all of our energies on that definitely can be done by a robot, because there can be things that agents should own, but there are things that humans should always own. Out of everything I just said, the thing I'm proudest the most has to be, actually, you know what, two things. Number one is probably emceeing our very first internal conference in California. I was asked to do that 2 weeks before I was supposed to be there. I had no notes. Greta, my co-host, super experienced at this. I learned a lot from her, and I think it was a really good opportunity for me to get out there, for people to know who I am, know what I do at the company, so that it will further elevate my work. As I said, there's that community piece that isn't just external, but also internal. That really opened the doors for me. I ended up emceeing London events, emceeing React Miami recently with Ryan Vogel from Open Code. I really enjoyed that. It made me realize how much I love just bringing the room together and bringing that energy in, which I feel like sometimes can be lacking at tech events. Even better than that, in terms of proudest thing I shipped at Vercel, has to be my team. I feel like if you've been following me for the last 2 years at least, all I've been talking about is how incredible my team is. I am so proud that I had the opportunity to bring these people together, because everyone has a very unique skill set. That if you think of the best DX community team, it is these people. Everyone cares so much about the product and cares so much about the community, more than the average person, so that when they speak to other people, it really translates and everyone else starts to think, hey, actually, if I interact with the community more, I may be better at my job because I get to learn from them and build better products. I started to really understand that my impact is great, but I can make ripples, more impact that could really change things and move a direction with the people that I hire and I coach. I didn't really understand that at GitPod, not because my direct reports there weren't as good, but just because my mindset was very much, I need to ship and I need to be the best person to do this. Whereas my mindset at Vercel at some point changed to, I want to be the best community person there is, but I know I can be the greatest if I use my team well. Shout out to Amy, Anshuman, Jacob, and Maya, who gave me the opportunity to be a leader in the team. I honestly trust that with my departure, they're going to do even better. Sometimes you need change. You need to rock the boat a bit. When I handed in my notice, I was actually on the flight to React to Miami, and I was honestly very sad. I am a crier, and I cried. It was really difficult for me even to tell my team eventually that, listen, I've handed in my notice and this is what's going to happen moving forward. I've had the experience of being let go. That hurt because I didn't want to go, but it was needed as part of my journey. I think quitting and handing in my notice hurt more because I wasn't forced out. Actually, it was the complete opposite. I had Vercel being like, here's a bigger opportunity for you. I think you should own it. You'd be really good at it. Having that trust from everyone, it was hard to let that go and to be like, actually, no, I'm going to go elsewhere and do something else. Once I ripped off the Band-Aid, I became even clearer that it was the right decision. And I know 10 years from now, I'm going to be like, I'm so glad I took that risk. I'm so glad I left something super comfortable, being with people I know very well, to jump to an opportunity which I feel like will 10x my output and also open a lot of doors for me in the future, and also just genuinely change my life. I've learned so much from Vercel's community and how to react to everything that happens in that world. It's so difficult to explain. You really have to be in that environment to fully understand. I'm so excited to bring everything I learned there and package it up and be like, okay, in this next gig, I want it to look like this. And I want us to be ultra intentional. I want us to really sweat the details, really care. I want to talk about this book, The Uncontrollability of the World. If you follow me on social media, you know I've been talking about this in recent weeks. A lot of my story has literally been me letting go of control and being like, I'm going to let things happen instead of trying to force, like, I want this for myself. I want this goal to happen. And even though it's important to be ambitious in that way and set goals by any means and work towards them, I think the best opportunities come up when you're not looking. That's exactly what happened to me, which is why I am so excited to announce. Not yet, actually. I will say it another time, I reckon. But stay tuned to hear more about my next gig. I hope to do more of these videos. If you enjoyed this, definitely let me know in the comments or send me a tweet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.